Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Divine Feminine Healers podcast. I'm super excited to have Tess, who's the owner of Spellbinding and a professional tarot reader, on the podcast today. I actually did a tarot reading with her last week, and I've been following her on Instagram for a bit. So, yeah, I'm super excited to get into this today, Tess.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited too.
Wonderful. Something that I always like to ask my guests right when we get started is how do you connect with the divine feminine energy? Since that's very much a part of my line of work, and I find that it usually is for a lot of the people that I connect with too.
I think mostly through like trusting your intuition, trusting yourself, especially with reading tarot. It's like you really have to trust yourself, otherwise, it won't work. And just taking time for self care and having boundaries, especially with other people. If you're reading for other people, you have to have certain boundaries and emotional support.
Totally. Ugh, I love all of those things. That's exactly what I teach all the time it's really coming back to your intuition and trusting yourself. And yeah, the boundaries piece is so key because you're constantly working in other people's energies. So it's like if you don't have a clear practice of detecting of what's yours and what's not yours, then it's going to be really hard to determine what your intuition actually is saying.
Yeah, and it's really important to like understand when you need to rest. Like if you're feeling so much energy or depleted because of that, then it's really important to take those days and just rest because otherwise you're going to completely burn yourself out and not be able to do or help other people.
Definitely. Exactly. So I'd love to hear, when was the first time that you got into tarot?
Um, it was sort of random. Like I was just going through a little bit of a difficult time and I was in a bookstore and they had a tarot deck and I bought it and then I started using it and it was extremely accurate to everything I was going through and it really helped me. And ever since then, I've just always used it and started reading for other people. It proved even more how accurate it was and how healing it was for other people. And yeah, I never stopped.
Whoa, that's so wild. So, what were some of the like trust in your intuition that you got when you did one of those first tarot readings?
It was a lot about like I know that this path isn't the right one, but I need to make sure. And then like reading the cards, and it was always saying exactly what I knew, but maybe was hoping a different outcome. So I didn't really want to acknowledge it. I was like, well, maybe it's not true. Maybe it will turn out differently. But the cards were always like, no, it's not going to turn out differently. And but that helped because it was like, okay, I'm right. I just need to acknowledge it.
For sure. Yeah, that's what I love about your tarot readings too. It's like, and you said this, it's like it doesn't tell you exactly what you want to hear, but it's what you need to hear, or something, you said something to that effect. And it's so true because it is something that you know that's within you. It's not like you're telling your client something that's like completely out of left field. They're like, I know, it's like an eye roll. But it's, sometimes it's hard to admit because, whatever our blockages are at that time and whatever we want our current reality to be.
Yeah, I usually tell people I'm not going to tell you your future or anything like scary, like you're going to die in 2 weeks or something. I'm just telling you things that you already know, but like don't want to acknowledge or are refusing to acknowledge.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about your style too. So I had a tarot reading like I think it was almost a little over a year ago now, and I went into it wanting, of course, we want to hear like abundance and relationships and everything's going to be amazing. And honestly, that's what that whole spread was. It was like perfect. It was like the best, whatever. And that was not my reality for that year. It was like the complete opposite of that. And I think that that actually gave me like less hope, and it also took me off the track because I needed to come against that resistance. And now I can see how maybe that card pull is meant for a different year, and how that is coming into play. But if I would have gotten more of a reading on the truth of what was happening and the resistances that I was going to come against, then I may be able to have like gotten out of my way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also, like, I always try to tell people you have to put in the work too. So this is a good reading and it's saying like a lot of abundance, but also that's work, or you have to put in these steps, which is showing like hard work or whatever in order to get to the abundance. It's not just going to magically happen because I pulled cards and it's saying it's going to happen.
Mm. So yeah, so helpful in hindsight.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more about how you've built your business because we have a lot of just starting and prospecting solopreneurs, and it's really helpful to kind of hear that process. So when you first started, like when did you know, okay, I'm going to start doing readings on others?
um I first started online, so like not really face to face, more like I would do it over email. So that was kind of a way to dip my toe in, and not, it wasn't as scary because there wasn't a person directly across from me. But I started because someone just asked me. They were like, "Hey, will you do an event and do readings at this event?" And I was kind of terrified, but I just was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And it went great. And that's how I got into it. I just was like, "Okay, I'll do this." And I realized that it was going to work out and I could do it. And I feel like you just have to say yes, even if it scares you. And then you'll realize that you can actually do it, and, more doors will open.
Brief side note, do you know your human design type?
No, I haven't done that.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we could look it up after and I can put it in the intro. I just have like some inklings on what your design type is because it says kind of the way that you would attract clients and just like relationships and opportunities come your way. And usually it's projectors where it's like we get the invitations. I'm a projector as well. So it's easy for us to kind of respond in that way. But doesn't, no, it's just a complete side note. It doesn't necessarily have to apply. But I think that that's really important that it just really comes to saying yes and doing the thing that you're really afraid of. So, what was the process of, saying yes to that one event and then being like, okay, I'm going to step into my own and create my own business?
I think it was like realizing, reading for other people, getting that energy, and how it felt like helping other people, connecting with them. It was so much more like connection, sitting across from someone, and so much more rewarding. So I liked it way more than just being over the computer and not really interacting with anyone. And that's when I really geared towards doing in-person stuff instead of just doing online, and like even over Zoom, because it really does make a difference when you can see the person and like talk to them more than just sending an email.
For sure. I think that's so important too that like everyone's different whether you have the in-person contact and or if you're more online and like you could be both, but in the beginning you really just have to pick which one is your lane and go after that because that's the one that's going to feel most natural and just everything's going to happen more organically that way.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's fine to like test out a few different ways. Like if you're first like nervous about confronting or like being around people, it's fine to do it online, and then you'll get more used to reading the cards or like how your style is. And then when you actually read for other people, it won't be as daunting as maybe if you just first started doing that.
For sure, for sure. And something that I also love that you bring to your Instagram page is just such authenticity. And I find that that creates the most magnetism, but I just really love the way that you present it. And so I know that that sometimes can be a journey in itself. So, what were some of the challenges you had in stepping into your authenticity?
For a long time, I didn't post like anything on my Instagram that had anything to do with me. And I was trying to keep it super like business, where it was just like only about the products or only about, you know, what I was selling. And then I realized that like all the Instagram that like I liked, or the people that I liked, were being authentic, and they were posting stuff about them or their lives and everything along that. And I was just like, okay, I need to be more authentic. And that's what I like. And, it really does make a difference because you connect with people more. the biggest hurdle I think is like trying not to be perfect. So like the first like time doing reels, the first time doing stories is like, you try to make it perfect, or you have to re-record 50 times because you're like that wasn't good enough. And now I'm like, okay, it's good enough. I just record it once and it's good, because you stop panicking about being perfect and you're just like, this is what I do, and I'm not going to worry about it because I don't have the time to try to make everything perfect. That's not real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what the audience loves too. Like if you're even on TikTok and you see like people are like eating meals while making a TikTok, they're like doing other things, like they're just having a conversation and I'm watching it. Like I'm watching the full thing. Like I'm engaged because they're just like regular people in their life. And I think it's like I also have this theory that it's kind of connected to our fascination with with reality TV, not my personal fascination, but the rest of the world. And I think it's just because people really crave that authenticity and people just being real and honest, because that's what life is. Life is not perfection and being all glammed up or whatever all the time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the more people are invested in you, the more they're invested in whatever you're doing or whatever you're selling.
Mm,
So it's like the more authentic you can be, the better it is for everything you're doing business wise as well.
totally, totally. So now I kind of want to shift a little bit more talking about tarot, because you're actually, I think, one of my first tarot readers on the podcast, which I love. I love tarot, but I personally just use oracle cards, just because I have the Goddess deck by Dora and Virtue, and that's just like the one very close to my heart, and I love connecting with the goddesses. But yeah, the symbols and the more of, I should say, like the backbone and structure of tarot is foreign to me, and I'm sure foreign to some of my audience. So can you kind of just describe like the different elements that go into tarot and how it's different than oracle cards?
The biggest difference about tarot and oracle cards is that oracle cards can kind of be about anything. It depends on who's making them. And usually they're more light and not, super dark, or they don't have any cards that are like negative. Usually it depends on who makes them, but most of the time they're more uplifting and light. Where the tarot, no matter who makes the deck or what deck you have, they're always the same cards. There's always 78 of them, whereas in oracle it can change how many cards there are. And they have like good and bad cards. Even though I don't necessarily think that like the bad cards are like bad cards like people think, but there's like the darker cards and then the good cards. So it's more contrasting compared to like an oracle deck.
For sure. And just to give our readers an example of this, what was the card that I got in our reading? It was like the gushing heart with like three swords in it, I think.
Yes, the Three of Swords. That's one that can be that's one that like is considered not the best card because it represents like betrayal and mistrust, usually with someone that you care about or trust a lot. And it usually is referencing a relationship. So a lot of times if people are in a relationship and that card comes up, it's like not a very good sign, so no one likes that card.
Yeah, and it's so true, like your perspective on it, because when I got that card, I like laughed and I was like, oh yeah, that's for sure what I'm going through, or what I is present for me. And I think that when you're in this scope and you do energy healing and you're intuitive, it's like you know what your shit is already. So of course, I think betrayal, if you're already in it, you couldn't see it coming, it can catch you off guard. But it honestly gave me a lot of relief because it brought clarity on this relationship that I still had to let go, that I still needed to do healing work for. So I was like, okay, this is great. Like I know what I need to do. I know that this is causing my stuckness that was showed up earlier in the card. And when I learn to heal and do the work that I need to do around this relationship, that's going to bring me my other desires into fruition.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's not necessarily a bad card, but it depends if, like you said, the betrayal has already happened, or where you are in the card. Like if you've just found out, if you haven't realized it yet, or if you're kind of past that point, and are moving on.
For sure. So something else I love about the tarot cards is that I think that's called major arcanas. Arcanas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that they're sequential, and kind of like the story behind them. And I know there's a lot of them, so not you don't have to go into each detail, but can you kind of just describe what they are in tarot?
Yeah, so they're basically like the archetypes. So they each represent more so a personality or like psychology in a way of each person, or like something that you'll go through in life. So like the Fool represents taking a risk, and it represents innocence and trying new things. And there's a lot of symbolism in each card. So in the Fool, he's like jumping, he's about to leap off a cliff, which represents like taking, a leap of faith. And he's holding a white flower, which represents innocence. And then there's a dog at his heels, and the dog represents like society, and like society being like, don't take the jump, don't take the risk, like it's dangerous. And so there's all different things that you can talk about in each card and actually go really in depth with, but they all represent different things like that, like aspects of society, aspects of different people, and how they relate to us.
I love that. And I guess in my head, because of the way that I first was presented them, it was taught kind of like in a story where it was like kind of chronological. And so is that just something to understand the mythology behind them? Or do you often see that, let's say, if you did a pull a card and it's like the fifth one, then you're like in that part of the story and that you would chronologically go through the other cards?
So it is like a story. So sometimes people relate it to like the tree of life and stuff. Like it's a journey and you're going through it. Um, the Fool is like the hero in it because he's the first, you're taking that risk. And then once you take that risk, then you go to the next card, which is the Magician. And you can go all the way through. And the Magician is like, okay, you took the risk and now you have to start working and you have the tools available to you. So, what are you going to do with that? And then it goes to the Chariot. And then it's like, so you can keep going down the line and see like where you keep growing and you keep building. And if it comes up in a reading, it's more so like what the reading's about. But you can see maybe like if the Tower comes up, if you're getting stuck in the Tower, then you're not like understanding what it's about, and you're getting stuck in that journey, and you're not transforming, and you're not allowing yourself to break down these walls because you're stuck in this tower. And that's kind of what that journey's about, is like breaking down the walls of the tower so you can move on to the star.
Hmm. Awesome. Do you notice when you pull for yourself that it kind of fits in that story order?
I really don't read for myself much. Like people ask me that all the time, and it's hard to do readings for, like, I find it's hard to do readings for myself, or like even people that I know really well. Like my sister wants me to read her cards all the time, and I'm like, it's really hard because I know the situation and I
For
don't want to
sure.
skew the outcome of the cards to what I want
For
the
sure.
outcome to be. So it's I find it's a lot easier to read for like complete strangers.
Definitely. I find the same too. Like it's because we have, yeah, there's such a tight connection. And even I don't know if you've watched the Tyler Henry series on Netflix. He's known as like the Hollywood medium, but he has a series on there where he does readings, and whenever he's too attached to the reading, he's like has a very clear mediumship gift. He like can't connect. It's because his emotions are overriding it. And I see the same thing like in our line of work too. It's like I have too much emotional connection here, where I want my own desires that are connected to it, that it's hard to become so unbiased.
Yeah, because I usually am like, I'm overthinking it then because I'm trying to think like, is this my own emotion
Hmm.
that I'm reading? And then I don't want to read that. And then it's honestly a lot harder. And people think the opposite usually, where if you know the person, it'll be a lot easier.
For sure. Do you ever notice when you're giving these readings to others that there happens to be like certain themes that pop up?
Um, it really just depends on the person, but like lately, a lot of the themes have been people being burnt out or needing to rest and like take a break, or people feeling stuck and kind of needing to rest because of that. So they can just like rest for a little bit and move on to whatever they're going to move on to.
Yeah, that definitely came up in my reading too, which is funny. I do you notice that this ever coincides with astrology?
Astrology isn't really my big thing, but sometimes, like, I mean, obviously, we're in like Mercury retrograde right now, so that can affect things like communication. And maybe like that's one of the reasons everyone's feeling stuck or just not knowing where to go. But otherwise, I don't necessarily notice any big differences with astrology in people's readings.
Yeah, I was going to say that makes so much sense because Saturn also just changed signs after being in the same sign of Capricorn for 2.5 years, and I study Vedic astrology, so it's a little bit different than tropical. But it makes a lot of sense that this month is a lot for people restructuring and kind of also starting to balance work and rest. So yeah, that's kind of why I brought it up because I think it's so interesting how it does kind of reflect, and you can kind of see those themes, and it's really cool to see those coincidences. But it also makes sense because your readings are so personalized. Like mine was so specific, like on my current situation that I don't think the whole world's going through betrayals right now in relationships. So yeah, I get that piece too.
Yeah, it's more, I think tarot is more specific than like an astrology, like overall astrology right now. But like I said, there are some things like obviously Mercury retrograde, everyone kind of is affected or feels that in some way. So that can show up in a reading. But otherwise, I think it's mostly just personal issues that come up.
For sure. And so I know you make really beautiful products that I saw on your website, and what inspired you? Because honestly, I love products, and I'm so fascinated when entrepreneurs can like create that. I don't know. It just seems like something that I don't know if I'll ever do, but I can really like revere people that get into that type of stuff because I love using products. But when did you start to, um, yeah, start to add products to your services? Because that's, yeah, such a huge undertaking.
I actually did the products first,
Oh,
and I've been doing them for like about 5 years now. And I started because I was working with someone who's making like all natural skincare. And so I got into essential oils and I learned a lot about essential oils, and I loved the all natural aspect of it, but I wanted to bring something else. And that's where the intention idea came from. And so I started making like all natural candles and the ritual oils, and they all have a specific intention behind them. And that was just for me, like, I like the fact that they each have a specific reasoning behind them besides just being like all natural, you know?
for sure.
So yeah, that's how I got into it.
Yeah, I love that because yours have like intention within each of them. Is that correct?
Yeah, they all have different intentions. So, like, I have a protection candle, and that's to help protect your space and yourself. I have a rich witch ritual candle, and that's for like money manifestation. And then every oil, crystal, and herb that goes into it is made to enhance the intention of the candle or spray.
I love that so much. What have you noticed? Like, what has been the biggest shifts you've noticed in your clients in using your products? And like, do you usually recommend them with a certain other practice and with other rituals?
Um, I like recommend them for like anyone. I think they're good for beginners because you can just like light the candle, maybe write something down. It doesn't take a lot if you're new to it, you don't really want to do anything like big or that's going to take a lot of time. Like you can just easily light a candle, kind of set your intention and you're good, you know?
For
So
sure.
I think for beginners or people who aren't really too into it but still want something to manifest and set their intentions, it's good for, because it's pretty simple to use. Or even the ritual oils, like you can just wear it every day if you want, and it's simple to use. That was kind of the idea too, is like it's for everyone. So like
For sure.
you don't have to be super into like being witchy or anything like that. You could just like the smell and wear it as an all natural perfume, but it still has that intention behind it. Or you could be really into it and know how to use everything. So
Yeah, I think that's so important because, I mean, even from my perspective as an Ayurvedic practitioner, most people come into this world wanting to heal digestion, diet, exercise, very physical form. And that's great because it's helpful, right? It like, and having these products and these rituals are helpful for it. So it's like kind of like a gateway to get people in. And that's how it usually starts with people of then they start to understand the mental and emotional aspect and then the spiritual aspect. So I think that's like a great accessibility point. I'm curious to hear what have been some of the results that your clients have gotten from using some of your products.
Um, I would say that the biggest one that I hear about is from like the Rich Witch candle or the Rich Witch spray that I have. And people say that they always use it around their workspace and it helps bring them a lot of abundance. And a lot of people like that. It's like my best seller. I'm always selling out of it. So I always take that as a good sign that people are bringing in a lot of abundance.
Yeah, I love that so much. And the name is so cute. I might just go stop by and get that as well.
Thanks.
So where can our listeners work with you if they want to buy your products and if they want to get a tarot reading and all that stuff?
So they can shop all my products and get book tarot readings online at shopspellbinding.com. And then if they want to follow me on Instagram, it's spellbinding with two G's. And I'll post any new updates, anything that's going on my Instagram. I also post a lot of like information, tarot education on there. So that's a good thing to follow. And then I'll also be coming out with a podcast in a few weeks, and it'll be called the Everyday Witch Podcast. So if you follow me on Instagram, there'll be all that information on there.
Awesome. I'll have all of that linked in the show notes. And I'm so excited for your podcast. And I love following you on Instagram. So definitely go give Tess a follow because I love the way that you describe tarot. And you also are going to be having a course come out soon, right?
Yes, I'm planning on this summer, the end of the summer, I'll have tarot courses. So I'll have some basic courses and then some really in-depth ones about each card and the symbolism and meaning behind each card. So if you're interested, subscribe to the site, or like I said, follow me and I'll have all the updates and information when that comes out.
Oh, I love that so much. It's so needed. Beautiful. Well, it was so lovely having you on the podcast, Tess. I just love talking with you, and thank you again for the reading. It was so transformational and continues to unfold. If anyone wants to sign up for a tarot reading, I'll have the link in the show notes. Definitely give Tess a follow on Instagram.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Awesome, everyone. I'll see you next time.